for a job, and it's not one that you come across straight away, to be a full-time Henry VIII. What's the correct word, Mike Farley? Impersonator? Character? What's
fraud? Well, on my passport is actor, so perhaps that Tudor actor.
And you've been doing this now for nearly 20 years.
Yeah, in my 19th year now. Yeah, about 5,500 shows, and still going strong.
So what does the day or a week or a month look like for you? Where do you take Henry?
Vast majority of my work is in schools. I do living history days with primary school children, Key Stage 2, telling them all about Henry and his wives and how horrible and disgusting Tudor life was and how lucky they are to live where they do now. But I get to work with the jousting team, the Knights of Royal England, and I tour around Britain doing shows with them. So I get to work in castles and palaces and do big corporate shows for very large companies, and any radio or TV work that comes along, like the Gateway FM, got to come and see you.
Do you go on the horses when you joust?
Oh, God, no, I'm so big I'd kill them. No, I'm purely the commentator, and I go on first in front of the crowd and warm them up, and then I introduce the knights one by one, and I get thrown into the royal box with my queen, and I just sit there and commentate on the show for the audience. So.
The living history days in school are great. I remember when I was in primary school, it must have been
About
Mary
3 years
Seacole.
ago.
Yeah.
He's so young, this boy, ladies and gentlemen. He's so young.
It must have been Mary Seacole who came to visit.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I went home and I said, Mum, Mary Seacole came to school today, and she told us all about her life, and she was amazing, and I really hope Mary Seacole comes back. I had no idea it wasn't Mary Seacole, because it wasn't like, well, hold on, we're going to do a live-in history day and a character who plays Mary Seacole. I thought it was her the whole time. And did you have that effect on the kids?
Sometimes. I don't.
Or am I just dense?
I'm saying nothing. I don't tend to stay in character as Henry with the kids. I am at the start. I pretend to be absolutely apoplectic with rage with them that they've sat down and that sort of thing. But I quickly point out that I can't possibly be Henry because he died in sort of 1547, so there's no way I can be him. But it's quite funny because I did a show the other week and this little girl came up to me during the morning break, and she said, "You're not Henry VIII." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." And she went, "No, but you're not." And I was like, "Yeah, I know I am." And she was like, "No, but you're really not." She had to sort of care in the community, like, "You're really not Henry."
Where does it start?
What, being Henry?
Yeah.
Well, my background is acting and stand-up comedy, of which I did so spectacularly well. I ended up in an office for 20 years. And I'd given up any ideas of performing or doing anything else again. And some friends of mine started doing living history days, going around schools doing Roman and Saxon and Viking days. And every school they went to, they said, "Do you know anybody who would be prepared to dress up as Henry VIII and come in and do a living history day? Because we're crying out for the Tudors in school." And just by chance, they knew this huge ginger maniac, but he was busy, so they asked me instead. And I initially resisted because I was doing what I thought was an important job. I had a mortgage, my son had just been born, and it was all a bit scary, the idea of...
Well, it's the unknown, isn't it?
It is. It's stepping away from getting regular money, and you've got a mortgage and everything. But they nagged me mercilessly for about 18 months, and in the end, I just sort of blew my top one evening and said, "All right, I'll do it. Prove to you it won't work. I'll do one show, and then we'll shut up about it." And I did the one show, funnily enough, in Essex, up near Saffron Walden, a place called Rickling Green, and I just loved it. As soon as I started doing the shows, I thought, "Oh, God, this is great. I love this." And it just went from there. And only about 6-8 weeks after I did the first show, I gave up work and became Henry full-time.
And how much did you know about the man before you became him?
Not much. I mean, I was history buff, but Tudors wasn't my thing. I was much more of a Dark Ages man, which sounds a bit bizarre. And so I did some research. I read all these very big, heavy tomes, which were boring, and then I read the kids' books, which were hilarious, and just took it from there, and then just tried to inject, because my background is comedy, I tried to make it as humorous as possible. So when I do my Henry days now, I do the show a bit like a stand-up comedy routine, and there's a load of very corny jokes in there. And so I get to go and do all the schools. I do lots of places like WI groups and U3A groups and Rotary clubs and history groups. Anybody who wants me, really. I'll go anywhere for money, anywhere.
I'll tell you what I know about Henry VIII.
Go on.
Didn't like churches, and I think I'm right in saying divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived.
Give the man a round of applause.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's spot on.
That's Horrible Histories, because that's where I learned it all.
I'm just like Horrible Histories,
show.
only I'm funny. See, that's the difference, you see.
He really is the most famous, isn't he?
Oh, his reach is international. I've found that out. I did a show up in London many years ago when I first started. I got booked by a very posh travel company, and they got their far-flung tour guides to come to England, and they put on a Tudor evening for them. And these guys were coming from places like Bhutan, Nepal, and Mongolia.
They get trained up today to show other people around.
No, they took English tourists around these places,
sorry.
but this company paid for them to come over.
Yeah.
So a lot of them had never been outside of Bhutan or Nepal. As soon as I walked in the room, they go, "Oh, Henry VIII," and you're like, "Oh my God!" You know, they know him even in the Himalayas. They know Henry VIII, and I remember being accosted by a Brazilian film crew once when I was up in London, and it's Henry VIII, come and talk to us. And so it's worldwide. He really is the epitome of English royalty, I think.
Is it fair to say he's not a very nice man?
No, he wasn't. He was a nice man at the beginning of his life. His life you can split into two distinct phases. The early part of his life, every single report on him, people are saying, "Oh, what a lovely guy, isn't he wonderful? He's handsome, he's strong, he's pleasant, he's easy to go, but he's easygoing," and everyone loved his personality. And all of a sudden, he's this monster. And people have speculated over the years, was this from illness, was it whatever? The latest theory seems to be that he was a very keen jouster, and he had a couple of very serious head injuries when he was jousting, where he got hit with the lance in the head. And they think he suffered some form of brain damage, and that obviously can alter your personality tremendously. And they think that possibly is what caused him to become such the monster that he was by the end.
And why so many women?
He's the king, you know. Or do you mean me? No. Just because he could. I mean, children often say to me, "Why did you have 6 wives?" And you just say, "Well, because he could." You know, he was married to this first wife for 23 years. It was a long, very successful marriage. She then he still didn't have a son and heir. That's all he was interested in. He wanted a son and heir more than anything else in the world to carry on the Tudor name. And by the time, after 20-odd years, Catherine of Aragon, they believe, was too old to give him any more children. So he wanted a new wife, and he more or less said to her, "Look, well, can you just clear off so I can have a new wife?" And she quite rightly said, "Well, no, I've done nothing wrong. Why should I?" And he changed the whole ethos of our country. He changed the rules completely so that he could marry someone else. He basically took us away from the Roman Catholic Church. The Pope was in charge. He then changed it so it was now the Church of England, and he was in charge, so he could then get divorced. And then he married Anne Boleyn. Obviously, that didn't work out, so she was got rid of. He then married Jane Seymour, who gave him a son, but unfortunately died doing it. And you assume, well, perhaps he's going to stop there. No, he doesn't. He has 3 years of mourning for Jane Seymour because he misses her so much. He then marries Anne of Cleves purely for political reasons, trying to get a bond with another Protestant state. He doesn't like her when she turns up because she's ugly and he's not happy. So he immediately divorces her, falls in love with one of her ladies in waiting. He's, by that time, in his late 40s. She's about 17, Catherine Howard. She obviously then supposedly betrays him by having affairs with other men. He gets rid of her and then marries for a 6th time to Catherine Parr. And I think that was just purely for companionship because he was old and lonely.
And that enormous legacy when it comes to the church, we're going to see played out in just a couple of weeks with the coronation, with the king as defender of the faith and leader of the church.
Fidelis Defensor, which was originally bestowed upon Henry by the Pope, the defender of the faith. That's where it came from, the Pope, because Henry wrote a treatise about how wonderful the church was while he was still a Catholic. Well, he was a Catholic his whole life, but he was given this special award by the Pope, and it's one of the titles that the English monarch still use, the British monarch, I should say, still uses.
What's a bit of a misperception about Henry VIII? Is there anything that the kids all saying it's not true? Something that's widely accepted?
Well, the two they always go on about is, goodness knows where they comes from. One is always, is it true he played tennis with Anne Boleyn's head after she was beheaded? Which is like, no. That couldn't go over the net. And the other one is, it took me a while to work out where this one came from, and say, did he explode when he died?
Because he was so big.
Because he was big. And there is stories that he, shall we say, slightly decomposed after his death when he was lying in state. He certainly didn't explode. The king who did explode was William the Conqueror.
Oh.
He exploded after his death. I won't go into details. It's graphic and disgusting, and you really don't want to know.
Well, fair enough.
Put
I'll
all
take
your
that.
listeners off their afternoon tea.
So if someone wants to get in touch or perhaps speak to you about getting into a school or somewhere else, how do they?
I've got a website, which is www.goodkinghal.co.uk. That's GOODKINGHAL.co.uk. Or go onto Facebook and look up the Good King Hal page, which is my business page on there, and you'll see lots of revolting pictures of me in tights.
Great.
Be warned, ladies and gentlemen, be warned.
Thanks very much.
That's a real pleasure. Thank
Good
you
to
for
see
having
you,
me.
Mike.
Thank you.
Mike Farley from Leindon, Henry VIII, Gateway 97.8.